My name is Mike. I'm a 23-year-old guy working at a coffee shop in a small village, but this doesn't matter anyway. I just want to tell you what happened before I jump off this cliff. It all started last week. I woke up, had a quick breakfast, and wanted to go to work. There was a big storm outside, so I even took an umbrella. As I got out of my house, I noticed it wasn't just water raining. People were fucking falling from the sky. One landed right next to me, his head basically disappearing from the impact. My heart almost stopped before I ran back to the house and sat near my window, watching the outside world like some kind of maniac. The storm lasted another 5 hours. I didn't even call my boss to tell him I was not coming in. I'm sure he saw the events as well. I went outside again. Bodies were everywhere. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Nobody else was outside. I could understand this. Probably everyone was scared and would rather stay in their house. Then I looked at the dead bodies. Some of them were so mangled from the fall, I couldn't even recognize them. But some of them were my neighbors. That's why nobody from the neighborhood was outside. They were all dead. I spent the rest of the day wandering around the village, trying to find any survivors. There were none. I even called everyone I've ever known in my life. I found the corpse of my boss on the top of his house. There was no logical explanation for how this could have happened. Every fucking person in the village was dead, except me. There was no tornado as far as I'm aware. No news stations were talking about the events. I had no idea what to do next. It was already late at night when I got home. Walking back to my house was terrifying. Terrifyingly silent. No cars, no people, nothing. Something wiped out the whole village, except me. I thought I wouldn't be able to sleep, but luckily I was so tired, I fell asleep in a few minutes. The following morning, it was another big storm, and as I looked outside the window, I was shocked. People were falling from the sky again. At first, I thought the wind picked up the dead bodies from the day before and was throwing them around again. But when a few hours later I went outside, there were twice as many bodies. But something was strange. Every single one of the corpses was male. That wasn't the case on the first day. And every one of them had black hair, just like me. I was thinking about stealing a car and getting out of the village to seek help, or maybe an explanation. It wouldn't be stealing anyway, as everyone here is dead. But I just wasn't able to drive. The emotional trauma from these events prevented me from focusing. The following week, the storm continued. It started every morning around 7 a.m., sometimes only lasting an hour, and sometimes it went on until midnight. Every day was the same. More and more bodies started to pile up on the streets and in my yard. Lots of times I heard the falling bodies hitting my house. The national news didn't say anything about what was happening. I didn't find anything about it on the internet. But then, where were the bodies coming from? The whole village was dead on the first day of the storm. But a week later, there are still hundreds of new bodies falling. As the days went on, the bodies started to look more and more like me. It was so uncanny. I just basically grabbed as much food as I could from the empty store and hid in my house. Weeks went by like this. Every day, I was thinking about ending it all. And when I didn't have any more food left and went out again, I froze as I stepped out of my door. Every dead body looked like me. And they weren't just similar. They were exact copies of me, like clones or twins of me. After I was able to overcome the initial shock, I decided to finally grab a random car and drive as far as I could from this hell. I grabbed my now dead neighbor's car and drove as fast as I could. I drove 2 hours before I reached the nearest city. When I finally arrived, I quickly found a parking lot, then quickly jumped out of the car. I was so happy I could finally see living people, but they all looked like me. They looked at me like I was crazy, but they were all copies of me. I ran away. Now I'm here, standing at the edge of this cliff. I hope someone will find this recording and solve this mystery. I won't.
Fascinating, isn't it? It's amazing how a brain alone can imagine a whole life for itself, and how easily it could turn into a nightmare after some small electrical impulses. Although it's an interesting subject, I find these experiments unethical, and I don't want them to continue. But nobody listens to me. I shared this because I want people to know about the experiments. Maybe a negative public opinion can convince them to stop. Best wishes, Jacob, CIA, Project Brain in a Jar.